say about this?
I am mostly just focused on where can we shoehorn this into the script, but Wes, go for the big thoughts.
Sure. Okay, a couple things. First of all, of course, we all use it. How many of us have not said, Alexa, okay, Google, or hey, Siri here at some point? None of my devices lit up. That's surprising. I sort of figured for sure I was bringing chaos on myself.
You got my attention. You probably order shoes through me or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. We all use it all the time. I had a really interesting experience the other day. There's a couple things I want to mention. A buddy of mine pointed out that the assistant that we both use, if you have multiple microphones throughout the house, as I do, rather than saying, please turn on the living room lights, you can just say, please turn on the lights. And if you're in the living room, those are the lights will go on.
Right.
And the thing that struck me about that from a Wisteria point of view is that a programmer is going to, this buddy of mine's a programmer is naturally just going to be more interested in the tech and is going to speak to his assistant in different ways from the way other people do. Remember that the big technology for human society was the ability to write down thoughts, to transmit thoughts without the person. Okay. The big thing that's going to be interesting for computers is the ability to transfer knowledge and process instantaneously without loss of fidelity.
Right.
Okay. And the reason this matters is my assistant doesn't need to learn about me to interact with me.
Right.
I hand it the necessary access control list, password or whatever, and it knows me. Period.
Yep, right.
It has the benefit of every interaction I've ever had with the device, which in this future world is going to cover from birth. I will buy a new personal assistant or whatever, and I'll say, call Dan. And it knows what I'm going to talk to you about.
It already knows.
Right. One of the qualities this is going to bring out in our characters is the all too human property of taking a good thing for granted. And when it comes to taking for granted a thing that might be able to think, humans also have a long history in this realm. But we are talking about a story in which the AIs are sentient in a very particular way. And I think there's probably something to be said for the idea that my assistant's a person too, even though I treat it like it's just Siri. My own, like as a point of my own mental and spiritual hygiene, I would always address the assistant using the word please.
I think about this stuff like there's nothing worse than finding out someone is shitty to wait staff. Like
there you go. That's
really
exactly what it is.
It's not, I'm just like, oh no. Politeness as a mechanism makes sure that we do each other no harm. It's an automated identification or validation of the other person's humanity. It just makes everything easier for everybody. You don't have to like be invested in the other person's life. It's just giving them the minimum amount of respect for the interaction means that their day is a little less shitty. That's it. And vice versa. Where that doesn't happen is in 85% of social media, right? Where we do treat people like bots all the time. We treat people as if they're just sort of a tool for our emotional release rather than as people. Something we need more than a universal translator, which is also just another aspect of what this is, right? Is a politeness filter, like that automatically, like if I'm having a conversation with somebody online, like I can just have a conversation instead of like typing it all out. I can just say whatever I want to say, and then the bot that I'm saying this to, like an assistant in Hollywood might, reframes this in a way that doesn't start fights.
Like it's transcribing, and it just doesn't transcribe the ad hominem attack.
Exactly. Yeah. Like I would have that set to high all the time on the internet.
I mean, what's interesting to me about what you're talking about is the way that we as humans we're tribal, right? Which I think is the answer to your question, right? Like it's tribalism that people on the internet are, if they're ideologically not our tribe and they're delocalized, then they're 100% the opposing tribe, and that's right. We dehumanize them. But also, even if somebody's in our tribe, we treat them with respect until they become so familiar that we start to treat them with contempt. And so
Right.
that is the
Right.
like the interesting thing where we sort of have this weird, inconsistency in the way that we, and by extension our characters in our show, are potentially treating people and AIs in their lives according to how close they've gotten.
Like, I would bet that anybody living in that world has probably like 1,000 lawsuits against them at any given moment that they're unaware of, that their lawyer bots are just handling, and that's all being played off screen, and you just sort of subscribe, $5 a month to make sure that nobody comes and messes with you, and then it's just part of a big integrated system that makes deals, that lives in the world between worlds. It sounds like the AI themselves, they have already created a separate weird Wisteria for themselves. There's in Hollywood, you'd say it's the world of the assistants, and the world of the assistants is a very different place than Hollywood that you think of. They have their own hierarchy and intercommunication and places they go and ways that get things done that producers and actors and everything else do not know anything about. And it's the stuff that makes the world run. It's not too far off from the way that we say that that Parliament works. Parliament is semi-aware of both worlds, slightly outside of each. And so, like, I think this is really interesting. I think that there's thematically, like, our characters, like Alice and Joao and Ronnie, are sort of living in that same kind of liminal world, right? And so that's what I would suggest for, like, the docks and the bodega and all that stuff. Like, that's not where people normally live in this science fiction world. Like, that is the liminal space. And it's where all these weird little transactions and deals are done in a sort of pseudo-legal separate way that makes everything work correctly. And if we can use PDAs, to suggest mirrors of their own action so that occurs to people, then I think that'd be very, very powerful. Because then you can, it's like the most obvious version, which I still love, is like in Tron, the original Tron, when it dissolves from the grid to Los Angeles, when you just go, oh, hell yeah. That sounds like a scene unto itself for a Wisteria short film, where you don't even realize they're PDAs until you're like, wait, are these guys in a virtual space and they're not people? They're just sort of like talking. Right. Like, that's a good little movie right there.
It definitely obviously makes me think of like the end of Her, when we find out that the operating system is just hanging out with the other operating systems most of the time.
It's like the best.
Yeah. I think that notion that that there's this weird little subculture around the docks, and by implication lots of other places have lots of other weird little subcultures, is something that was very much part of the original idea in the original game, and that we definitely want to keep running through this. And this is just like another axis that we can play with, is like, how do you use AIs in your little subculture?
That's what we wanted to talk about today with everybody. We are slowly opening up a Discord for Wisteria and all things Make a Thing. So we'll have more news on that to come. When we have sort of public creative chats like this, it's a total invitation to come and talk to us about this. And for right now, talk to us in the YouTube comments. And after our Discord is up, please come and talk to us directly, because I think there are a lot of really groovy ideas to share here. Thank you guys very, very much for this. This is very exciting, and we'll have more on next week's Make a Thing. Thanks.